I want to talk a bit about the man of the hour, Piers Morgan. Unquestionably one of the most famous people in the country. If you had to do a list of 20 famous Britons today, and probably 10 years ago, and maybe even 20 years ago, Piers Morgan would almost certainly be in that list. So I'm going to kind of divide this into two parts. Firstly, the latest developments regarding his sacking or his dismissal or his resignation, whatever way you want to consider it, from ITV, and the issues around that, and then more broadly, Piers Morgan, the man, and a lot of the talking points around that. I've just watched a video, Biographics. It's a good channel narrated by Simon Whistler, and the episode on Piers Morgan's particularly good. Simon Whistler has a very good. Excuse me, I just tapped the laptop. Simon Whistler really is a good presenter. The way he sums things up, the way he kind of puts his information together. I do watch quite a lot of his videos. Um, so on this latest incident, it's once again come down to a free speech debate. And interestingly, Megyn Kelly was being interviewed on the BBC. Megyn Kelly herself is a controversial figure. She is, I think, a chameleon in the way that Morgan is. What I mean by that is she has this way of sort of always being around and surviving no matter what. The same with Morgan. Um, I just never thought I'd see her on the BBC. I certainly didn't like her style on Fox News. I found it very shallow and tacky and very much epitomized, personified what I didn't like about Fox News. But she's now with NBC, and of course, there was even a film made about her, Bombshell. But this isn't about Megyn Kelly. This is about Piers Morgan. Um, in that interview, though, with Naga Munchetty, she said that if you're looking at the 41,000 complaints to Ofcom, how about the many more that didn't complain and would have agreed with what he was saying or liked what he was saying? She made a good point that that's not a good barometer because the ratings of that particular program were very high. Um, so it's true that you cannot go on complaints alone as a format of judging popularity or interest in something. Indeed, controversy sells. This is a point that Piers Morgan has always known. Um, for me, the issue regarding specifically the Meghan Markle thing is not that he didn't believe her. He's allowed to not believe her. It's the way he went about it. That's the contention. Um, and I think Nigel Manchetti was driving at that. That is this a case of being so offensive that it's polarizing, that at some point there needs to be a responsibility factor there, and I sort of agree with that. Whereas Megyn Kelly and the man himself, he was interviewed ostensibly outside his house, which is interesting to see him getting doorstepped. No doubt he is very much an advocate of it for others, but it was very much about, the right to an opinion. Um, Morgan said, I'm going off to hibernate for a while to be left alone with my opinions, and I'll be back, basically. Um, is it confidence? Is it arrogance? Is it a bit of both? I think there's a lot of adjectives that can be connected to Piers Morgan. I find myself with very, very mixed views about the man. On one hand, there is this very, very cynical character associated with the tabloid media, associated with everything that is wrong and sleazy about tabloid journalism. On the other hand, this is a man who states his mind and doesn't care what people think. I do think, though, that the storming off thing with Mr. Beresford was childish and was a bit of a tantrum, given that Piers Morgan has lambasted politicians for not appearing on his show. He's accused them of being cards for not facing him, but as soon as he's challenged, or rather in this situation when he's challenged, he just storms off because he can't take the heat. Um, To use his own words, man up, Piers, because he notoriously addressed the issue of male suicide and male depression by saying it was overblown and that young men should man up, which was tactless to say the least. And I think it's the same problem with the Meghan Markle thing. You know, he's entitled to believe that she is insincere. And this is a man who has had very close ties, relationships, whether working or otherwise, with some very famous people, apparently including Meghan Markle. So perhaps he is in a better position to evaluate if her personality is sincere in that way. But I still think the way he went about it was bad because he could have easily come out with that opinion and been more tactful about it. He could have said, "Look, I am sorry, but I just find it difficult to believe sincerity. But I recognise that mental health is a serious issue, and so is suicide." I think it's the way he was so dismissive that caused the backlash, including from charities like Mind. Um, I've got a book about Piers Morgan, or rather, written by Piers Morgan, The Insider. This was published in 2004, just after his time at the Daily Mirror. Um, from the age of 17, he wanted to be the biggest presenter in the UK, and he probably achieved that. I mean, he's got fame outside the UK. Of course, he had a stint in the States. And this is why I can't dismiss Piers Morgan as just another tabloid editor, because I do think there is a side to him that warrants respect. I personally respect the fact that and I know American viewers may not agree with this, but I do think it takes guts to stand up to the gun lobby in the States. And I always respected the way he done that. It didn't make him popular. And he actually cited that as one reason for his departure from CNN after just 3 years because of cultural differences. Even maybe CNN thought his views were too outspoken on the gun issue, although more recently they have also got outspoken. But I give Morgan credit for that. He did get a lot of heat, including from famed shock jock Alex Jones. Um, there was there was a kind of standoff between Alex Jones and Piers Morgan when Jones was ranting about 1776. There was also one with Ben Shapiro. Shapiro, I think, is a very skilled debater in terms of evading direct points. He will just talk and talk and talk. He's a talker in the way that Morgan is, to the point where he can deflect from any issue just by, instead of answering questions, just asking more questions. And that's very much what Shapiro done with the gun issue, in my opinion. Um, Needless to say, I totally agree with Piers Morgan on that subject. But, you know, I think a lot of Americans probably saw him as a British upstart coming in and trying to lecture them about the Second Amendment. But as he said, the reason I talk so much about this is because I like America, I like Americans, and I want to see fewer of you dying. That's very Piers Morgan. Um, but regarding the Meghan Markle thing, I mean, it's about the way it was done. It's not about not being allowed an opinion. There was an interesting thing though on Good Morning Britain leading up to this when he said he was with Susanna Reid, who of course was his co-presenter, sparring partner, you name it. One thing I have with Susanna Reid, she tends to, in my opinion, go with the comfort zone opinion. So Morgan was talking about, well, is it like they only want good press, Harry and Meghan? So what is who else has that? Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong Un. And Susanna Reid bristled at that, but I know what he was driving at. She was saying, well, isn't that understandable that they just want good press? That's not the point. The point is, it seems very controlling. Like they'll work with the press, but as long as it's favourable to them. So, for example, why is it not legitimate to call out their double standards on green issues when they lecture people about green issues, but then fly privately and so on? I do think that's legitimate, and it's one area I would back the popular press on. But with Piers Morgan, he's going to be back. He's only 55. I think ITV, actually, as a network, thrives on controversial figures. Remember, they backed Jeremy Kyle for a long time, which was, in my opinion, despicable. And I wouldn't put Morgan on par with Kyle, but they know that controversy sells. Good Morning Britain's always marketing itself as Piers is furious about this or Piers is furious about that. It's never about Susanna Reid, which, if I was in her shoes, I would feel a little bit aggrieved, but she is, after all, meant to be the co-presenter. Um, there's just so many things to say about Piers Morgan and angles to take. This, by the way, really, really does show the inside of that world, and it is just as sleazy and just as cynical as you would expect from the tabloid world. Now, I'm no fan of the tabloid press. In fact, at times I've outright had utter contempt for them. But it is useful to get an insight into that world and how it operates. Um, it's hard not to respect the fact that Morgan, as a teenager, set himself out to get this goal, and he's even superseded that. He's not only almost certainly the most famous presenter in Britain, but he's went beyond the boundaries of this country. He's famous in the United States. So, it's difficult to just dismiss that. But I do think the approach he takes to things is very much about interrupting people, talking over them, and then having a tantrum when they have an opinion. Can I just finish? Can I just finish? Well, Piers, it's you that won't let anyone finish sentences. So there is a lot of hypocrisy about the man. There's no getting away from that. I remember the time he ambassador Tommy Robinson, the call him what you will, the nationalist leader, the former EDL founder, Robinson, of course. It was about I don't know what the particular issue was on that occasion, but Morgan said, "You've offended millions of Muslims." And I'm thinking, you hypocrite. Because Piers Morgan, he's been outspoken on issues like the headscarf and the right to criticize Islam. So that was sheer hypocrisy. Um, but this is a man who he understands the power of controversy. He knows full well that he is going to be back in some format. Um, Whether, I don't know if that storming off was calculated or he really did feel that way. Who knows? But I think it's very much a case of, with Piers Morgan, watch the space. I'm sure there's other things I can add. I'd always be reluctant about overly praising Piers Morgan because I do think he had a very shady role in the phone hacking scandal. And some of the things he'd done as editor of I think it was the Mirror at the time, was despicable. I mean, the 1996 World Cup final, he apparently was actually contemplating a stunt of driving a tank to the German embassy, and it was rightly deemed that that could have provoked violence at the event, football hooliganism and so on. So there's certain populism that Piers Morgan panders to that doesn't warrant respect, in my opinion. And yet I find myself respecting the fact that he is a voice that does stand up to woke ideologues and a lot of things that a lot of people would like to say. So honestly, the man is like Marmite. I personally have very mixed feelings about him. You know, there's certain aspects about him that I respect. There's other aspects I have no respect for. He is what he is. He is the country's most famous newsman, or rather presenter. Newsman might even be pushing it because he's more like a celebrity in some ways, like the celebrities he interviews. Because he had his time on The Apprentice, which is where he got close to Trump. He had his time on America's Got Talent. I do think there is some issues that he lacks conviction on, and he will just be controversial for the sake of it. I'm not sure. This is one underlying theme with Piers Morgan. I don't know how much of what he says he actually personally believes. I mean, he's alluded to the fact he likes to stir things up a bit. So I wonder how much of that is really his own opinions, or is it just like, this is controversial, so I'll just say it. I don't know. But I do respect the fact he stands up to woke ideology. That's a good thing. What I can't respect is some of the things he's done as within the tabloid world. Anyway, I'll leave it there. I'm sure there's more to say, but that will suffice for now. Thanks for watching.